Being able to remember some of you. All right, so yeah, really briefly, Dr. Levine was my probably I think my first class, my first day on campus here, and he taught me C. And let's see, Dr. Plants in the back. He taught me assembly.
Got it.
And then I don't remember what yeah, there's one of the classes I don't remember anymore. But that's because I focus so much on the little place where I live, which until recently was mobile games. So, and now I'm doing web stuff again. You guys remember I was doing web stuff constantly here, so we just can't get away from that. Anyway, so what is TuxPaint? This is TuxPaint. This is the best. This is a program for kids that I created because there was nothing like this for Linux at the time. Oh, we don't have all the full stamps, so that's okay. You can kind of compare it to KidFix, which I admittedly haven't really ever used, but the whole idea is something really fun and engaging for kids to play with. And like many of the projects I started as open source and game-like stuff, I think, I'll work on this for a couple days and then release it, and then, start the next project. And that was in 2002. So I'm still working on it. It's still version 0. something, because it's never going to be done. But that's kind of the cool thing, and that's what I want to share today, is kind of the life as an open source developer on kind of a big and popular project. From the notes here, I programmed in C, no C++, no Java. Again, part of the reason was because that's what you guys were teaching back then, and I've come to learn that I like it best anyway, even having used C++ or Java. I'm preferring C, but let's see. My inspirations were things like the Palm OS. If anyone used the old Palm OS. One of the cool things about that device is you can go in and you start taking a note, and then you turn the thing off, and you come back later, and your note's still there, and you're still doing what you're doing. It's all very kind of a fluid interface. There's no starting up, and then going to the application, and loading the thing you were just working on. It's just there. So if we quit TuxPaint right now, well, first, let's save our picture. Okay, it's saved. And there it is. We can make a new one. So, quit. Yeah. Save. Sure.
Actually,
is that going to work?
I use the one off the desktop.
Already,
But it seems to work.
already there, I guess. Quit. Yes. Okay, so it's asking me to put splash screen. And there it is. So, kids don't have to worry about file systems and all that kind of junk.
Hey, where's the sound?
Oh. I can make the sound effects.
And then erase something.
I'm known as a noisy keyboard. I always make noises when I move my windows around and so forth. This kid's gonna have a bad time when he grows up, I think. Yeah, it's gonna be a cartoon character. Anyway, so as it stands, it's about 25,000 lines of code. So says David A. Wheeler's Slock account. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. It's an open source program that actually analyzes your source code, which is kind of cool. I can tell you how many millions of dollars, how many man years your code is worth. I'll talk about that later, maybe. Considering how much I'm charging. Eventually, it's been ported to Windows, Mac OS, PS. Who here is familiar with the ASUS triple EPC, the little tiny netbook? All right. Now, I'm sure you've all installed Debian or something or Ubuntu on it since, but did you notice it came with TuxPaint? Comes with TuxPaint. I think that's so cool because they've been selling, 10 million of the things. Again, sorry, no royalties. And what's interesting is I look at it and I play around with it. Mostly I see it on the EPC running different, Ubuntu and stuff that people put on it. And oh man, it's not set up right. It needs to be configured properly. It's not suitable for this environment. The screen's too big and there's window art and stuff. But that's kind of a packaging issue that will eventually I'll help them fix. It's officially part of Ubuntu and Debian Linux. Actually, the guy who maintains the Debian package is part of the project. There's packages for other Linux distros. It speaks about 80 languages, and I can actually show you the configuration tool real quick. That lets you optimize touchscreen for your child to use. Click around full screen, change screen size, turn on and off sound effects. Little kids, for example, sometimes don't realize that the left button is the one you want to click, and they match all of them. So you can set it up to either let all of them work or kind of encourage them to use the proper button. Turn off the click button, turn off different things, kind of like that. And then here's all the different languages we support. To the varying degrees. And who here would like to guess how many of these languages I know personally?
One. The English variants.
Which I will mention here. I know English, and I probably know British English. Well, you know, you gotta send lorries in a truck, right? You gotta spell Colloquium and all that stuff. Let's see. Yeah, he recognizes that penguin, so you're bad. I'm surprised he's not on that machine right now. So, you know, when you're the lead developer of an open source software project, you end up usually becoming the project manager. So, I do a lot of tech support for parents and teachers who don't know much about computers and don't have time to care. I also have to keep track of who's doing what, so I can bug them later to do it again if I need more help from them. Documentation really helps. I keep a really extensive change log and author and contributor log, and lots of comments when we commit source code to the CBS repository. I know CBS. Everyone harasses me to switch to SVN. Oh no, now it's Git. No, wait, what's the new great thing? Whatever. I have to keep the website up to date, which for the most part means, you know, new file releases and stuff, but I like to put more content up there. Mailing list administration, so deleting the spam and sledding through all the good stuff that people try to post who actually didn't subscribe yet, or they sent them. Keeping track of the bug tracker and assigning bugs to all those people with copious free time who are working on the project. Say, hey, you go do this. Oh yeah, whatever, go sure. File releases, which is actually kind of a pain in the butt because depending on the person who packages it and so forth, sometimes I get, you know, 1 or 2 files. Sometimes I get like 40 of them, and I have to go into SourceForge's system to denote, okay, this is for Linux, and this is for i386, and it's an RPM file. Well, I can't figure this out based on the file name. It's like, okay, I'm going to do that 40 more times. So, you know, I try not to release every day or every week anymore. It's more like once every 6 months to a year. Part of that also has to do with, you know, where the project is and what kind of stuff gets thrown in it and how ready I feel it is. But usually once I get the kind of inkling of it's ready, then I start like kind of cramming and making sure everyone gets everything done and finished up at the end. I kind of come up with arbitrary, I want to get it out by the end of November or something like that. And sometimes it's like, well, school year's coming up. It might be nice for this kind of new version. Or Christmas is coming up, you know, people can burn it on disk or whatever. Press release writing, and my wife here edits for me sometimes. Makes it sound like real proper English. And then, boy, how many software websites out there? If you go searching for shareware or freeware or any kind of software, how many are there out there? Too many, I say, because I have to go try to keep them all up to date. And so one of the issues is sometimes you have like a site like CNET, CNET's download site, where they actually host a copy of the file. So if you've released a couple new versions since, and people are finding it on CNET, there's like 10,000 new downloads of this two-year-old copy because you haven't gotten around to updating it and they haven't noticed the new version yet. So that's actually kind of a pain. But at the same time, you know, it's free advertising. Not, again, that I'm making really much money off of this, but
$500.
1,000 actually for Google.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because well, that's actually the next topic. So Google Summer of Code, big money. How much is
Just enough to not have to pay on taxes.
what's 11 times 5,000? That's $55,000. So Google is funding $55,000 to Tux for Kids. So what would be 30,000 of which is for Tux Paint. So Tux for Kids is kind of this umbrella organization around Tux Paint, my project. Tux of Math Command, which was a missile command-based math game that I wrote the first code for in like 2 days and then promptly stopped. Little sidetrack note, part of the problem was September 11th. In the game, comets are falling, and if you remember Missile Command, cities are exploding, right? So we had the comet fall and a little animation of a city exploding. And then 2 days later, it was September 11th, 2001, and everyone freaked out. Said, okay, we're not working on this project. So since then, a bunch of other smart people, in fact, one of them is like internal medicine. I don't know if he's a brain surgeon. And then, I forget what the other guy does. So two really like uber smart people are spending their spare time working on Tux of Math Command and another project called Tux Typing, which is a typing tutor game. So we jumped on board Google Summer of Code. Everyone here should know what Google Summer of Code is, by the way. Does anyone here not know what Google Summer of Code is? Shy people? Okay. Google Summer of Code is something that open source projects like us can join in as a mentoring organization. And what we get is select the students from universities and colleges, anyone doing a higher kind of a degree system all around the world can sign up as students and try to apply for, this year was I think 175 open source projects, and I forget how many thousands of students there were applying. It was just ridiculous. We had about 200 people apply to the various Tux for Kids projects, and we got to accept 11. In the end, we got 11. And the students get paid $4,500, $500 up front once they get accepted, $2,000 in the middle of the session, midterm, if they're still doing good, and then if they don't get kicked out of the project for not working or being non-communicative or whatever else might upset the mentoring organization, then at the end, upon successful completion of the project, they get the other $2,000. And then the mentoring org gets $500 per student. So $5,000 gets split between the org and the student for each student. So that's where I'm getting this, $55,000 number. It's for 11 kids around the world, a bunch in India, Europe, everywhere, working on the project over the summer. And it got a little hairy. Part of the problem was we had way too many students, and I think it was because we were kind of low-hanging fruit. We were new to the project. We were kind of a fun, easy-sounding set of programs. And one of the other problems is Google extended the time limit by a week when they decided that too many schools were going through exams, say in Europe, Germany, and places like that. They said, okay, we'll give students another week to apply, and that pretty much doubled the number of applicants we got. And at the same time, the people who were saying they could mentor said, okay, well, we understand the application time is within this week, and then the next week I'm going to be out of town. And then all of a sudden, it was extended that week that they were out of town, so they started freaking out. So it got a little scary, but we figured it out, and I believe we passed all 11 students. I nearly failed one of mine. But in the end, he said, oh, I was having trouble with CBS. Here's a bunch of stuff. Okay, sure. You tried. So what we've learned, I think, next year we're going to have more of a kind of an exam. A lot of organizations have exams, like can you actually program? Do you really understand computer sciencey kind of stuff? Do you understand what a software code repository is and how to use it? Are we going to spend the first month of the project trying to get you started, whereas someone else who already knows a little more can jump right in? But at the same time, we try to tune it a little bit. We don't want to say, okay, you don't know how to program yet. You don't know anything about open source. You're not allowed in. Because part of the reason Google's doing this is they want kids like you to understand the open source process a little bit more. And then on the side, they see the really good students and they kind of use it as like maybe a recruiting thing for people working at Google, apparently, down the road. But so that's kind of what they get out of it. But yeah, they're funding like in total. I don't want to be off very long. Something in the millions just for the summer. So, yeah, and for some of us, we were a little bit busy. So it was kind of hard to mentor the students. Just because, I was in the process of moving and changing jobs and so forth. So I had my own issues. But at the same time, the students are supposed to be working pretty much, considered full-time. They're doing this as a job. So after saying all that, for those of you who are still going to be in school by next spring and are interested in possibly making $4,500 and learning about open source and working on potentially cool stuff, it's something to keep an eye on and look into. Another thing that they actually do, they started last year, is they call it GHOP, Google Highly Open Participation. And that's where, pretty much the same kind of project, but for high school kids. That happens around winter break. So, that's what we're talking about. So, we're very northern hemisphere centric around here. So, anyone have any questions so far? I'm kind of fast because I'm realizing I don't have too much time. So,
How about, can you speak briefly on the values and the frustrations of being a source project?
I've got a whole frustration section later.
Does that include the values?
Values. Oh, value. You gotta be a grass-eating hippie. No. I guess I'll take a side note. Here, sunglasses are good. One of the reasons I do open source is because it's a very easy entry for me. It's low entry barrier. I can write some code, and if I release it under the proper license, that can attract other people to work on it with me. And so I get free help, pretty much. And the way they see it is that their work is not going to be kind of stolen by me, or they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of. We all feel pretty much level playing field, like peers. Take it out, sorry. Here it comes. Well, of course, be able to hear him screaming from a block away. Oh, I get a phone call at the same time. Shut up. We love technology, don't we? So yeah, I have this low barrier to entry in terms of finding help and in terms of being distributed. So I write a game for Linux just to scratch an itch, just for fun, to learn how something works and figure it out for myself. And then I release it, and then a couple years later, it's on a handheld game system, like on the PlayStation Portable, or it's on the Sega Dreamcast, or Virgin Atlantic Airlines has this in-flight system called Red that you can, listen to music and watch movies and play video games. And out of all the games I made, they decided to pick Mad Bomber as a title to put on the plane, and they didn't change the title or the graphics or anything. It's just a game where you catch bombs at a little Mad Bomber guy dropping on the screen. It's a clone of Kaboom, if anyone remembers the Atari 2600 way back in the day. And it probably wasn't the best game because it was a joystick controller and you're supposed to use a paddle, but whatever. I mean, it was kind of a cool little tickle to say, oh wow, these guys, all of a sudden, tens of thousands of people flying around in the air, bored out of their minds, can play one of my games. And like I said, on the Asus EEE, they've got touchscreen on there, which is great because it's kind of supposed to be a little bit of an educational device. And for those of you who are curious, we do have touchscreen running on the OLPC, the little $100 quote-unquote laptop. XO1, I guess, is the model number. But that's something that we're doing. That's not something that the OLPC people are working on because it doesn't really adhere to their interface. It's not something that they've really adopted yet. But there's some people who said, the paint program on that thing sucks, let's get touchscreen on there and actually get the work to do that. And he's actually a very crumpy, curmudgeonly guy in our project. So he's always complaining to me about things, and okay, whatever. We'll figure it out. You make it work and then submit something. That's great. Which he does. I mean, that's an interesting thing. TouchPaint's got a very cool smudge tool, for example. And that's not something that I think I could write by myself without, digging around and finding a lot of good code. But let's see, what's another one we added? Oh, Well, another example was, for example, you may blur gamma correct. So you put a gamma correction into blur. Remember, this is a program for 3-year-old kids. But that's the thing. It's whatever interests the people. They work on it. I guess maybe I should talk about the things that have been done for Summer of Code on TuxPaint, just to mention real quick, because that'll lead on a little bit to the cross-platform stuff. One of my students, a girl from India, wanted to use TuxPaint as a way to teach correct writing and to help people with dyslexia. So what she ended up doing, and it was very close to the end that I actually was able to get her work to compile and utilize the libraries that she ended up choosing, because she had some false starts. Go like this, click a button, and then it transforms into a font. It converts your scribble script into actual text, which I think is really cool. You just write, click, and it comes out. Two other students were just adding some random extra magic tools. As you can see, we have all these kind of random effects. One person was adding kind of a layered text system. One of the complaints that I get from teachers is when you write text in TuxPaint, it actually gets painted onto the screen, onto the canvas. So you can't later on click it and edit or drag it or change the size of font or anything. Because it's literally become pixels on the screen. You can blur it and smudge it just like I did here. You won't be able to really retype that anymore, right? And have it still look the same. This fellow added a layer that, no dogs here, that gives you kind of a separate layer of text that gets saved as kind of metadata along with your final picture, which I admittedly have not looked at yet, because we're still, we were just finishing up the Summer of Code stuff, and I haven't gone back and looked at what all the other people working on TuxPaint have worked on, where their code is. And then another student added the ability, and this was another complaint that teachers had, was how do I save anywhere on the computer? And they go, that was not the point of TuxPaint. The point of TuxPaint was to be its own little sandbox. But I guess I can see you might want to email it to grandma or add it to Microsoft Word or upload it to a website or stuff like that. And without having to find where TuxPaint stores its files, it'd be nice to be able to just arbitrarily open and save pictures. So he added a UI level on top of TuxPaint that actually gives you just a regular file open dialog. And that one's probably going to be a headache. Integrate and do it right so that it remains simple and at the same time parents and teachers can open it up to the kids. Because the last thing you want is somebody saving this file as taxes.xls. Right? And then there was I don't even remember what the tux typing. There was some kind of Indic language support. There were some new math games. One of them was Factoroids, which is a game like Asteroids where you shoot the rocks and they break into factorials. They break into factors. I forget what else. But again, you can go look it up on Google Summer of Code's website. And eventually, once we're all done with this, we'll have a nice big announcement to say, this is what happened at the end. The other cool thing that Summer of Code does, so far as mentors are concerned, is they actually fly up to 2 mentors per project. Not for every project. They have some that they don't invite, usually because of they fail to work out for them well enough. They actually invite them to go down to Google Plex in Mountain View. So I'm going to try to sneak in since I live so close, but I'm trying to see if I can get some people from our project to come from out of the country to go to that. So let's see. So part of my problem with doing cross-platform stuff is I'm a Linux guy. I don't really know Windows development. I don't want to know Windows development because I don't like the platform. Mac development, we were on what, like System 7.5, right? And I've got a Mac Mini in a box at home that I don't ever use, which I need to get rid of. So I never got into Mac OS X development. So I kind of rely on other people. So when I say time for a new release, and I really want to be able to say to the world, those people that are actually paying attention to TuxPaint, you can get it now for Linux, Windows, and Mac. I have to wait for these guys to actually get their stuff done. And sometimes that involves having code updates before even I can release just the source version, just to make sure it's all kind of rolled finding Mac developers kind of like pulling teeth. I've got one guy who's actually stuck around for a couple of years now, but in the past it's been, one-offs. Here's a new version for the Mac, and then here's another new version for the Mac that is completely packaged differently. It's in a tar file instead of the DMG, and it just wasn't really, they didn't really stick around as part of the project. And obviously I understand, I'm not paying them, so they have no reason to stay except for loving the project. Windows operating systems are pretty different, and in the recent version, because we have so many dependencies on some new libraries, we can turn off those dependencies, and that allows us to build the Windows 90X, 95, 98 ME version separate from the Windows XP Vista 2000 version, which of course ends up becoming this clog of, I downloaded it and it doesn't work. Whoa, what version of Windows do you have? So you end up with a little bit more to deal with when it comes to that. That's probably my son. So there's been some other one-offs. There's been like if people know the Nokia 770 or 800N little internet tablets that run Linux. There's been a version or 2 for those. But since then, they've revved the operating system, and the version of TouchPad doesn't work with it anymore. So, and the people who worked on that aren't around, and they're not really part of the project. So I can't support it. I don't have that device. I don't have time to learn how to develop for that device. So it just kind of languishes. But I'm obviously most interested in the big 3 platforms personally. Interestingly, BOS. Anybody remember BOS? Yeah, okay. Some of them maybe older people here. There's one of the people who's been sticking around for a long time. He's on IRC all the time. Is this guy named BOS port. So the BOS port keeps up to date with the Windows Vista and the Mac OS X version, which is kind of cool. So in coding stuff, you end up using a lot of if-defs, at least the way we do it. So that lets you keep these older platforms around. So, I can't do SVG vector graphics support on Windows 95 because the libraries that we depend on really don't support it anymore. We don't have time to actually make them support it. So, older Windows version doesn't have a cool vector graphics feature. But that means now you got a bunch of if-defs in your code, which is kind of hard to maintain. But that's something you end up learning to live with, and it could be a lot worse. I've seen a lot worse, especially in mobile development, where literally 2 phones from the same manufacturer are completely incompatible in certain ways. Oh, and then Java doesn't have if-def, so you have to do some kind of weird Java if optimization or something. I don't remember. So I did this in. Is anyone familiar with Simple Directing Emulator (SDL)? People who like to write games, maybe. Okay. So it's a very low level. It's kind of like a replacement for DirectX. It actually sits on top of DirectX on Windows. It sits on top of X11 or frame buffer on Linux. It sits on top of Cocoa on Mac. Is it Cocoa? Which one's the absolute newest one? Carbon, Cocoa? I don't know. But it pretty much gives you surfaces to draw on, and really that's about it. Like and events and sound. So really basic stuff. So all these buttons and widgets and clicking and highlighting and all that stuff, I wrote that all by myself. Which makes it very easy to port. You can port it to systems that don't have, the really high-end widget libraries and all that stuff, and that you don't want to run C++ on that take advantage of those libraries. But at the same time, run this in Arabic, and sure, the text goes backwards, but that wasn't nice. But, tools are still over here, magic is still over here, the OK buttons and stuff are still on the right side. It doesn't actually flip the entire interface like it really should to be a true native application. So that just becomes yet another thing that we have to do by hand. So it kind of ends up being a trade-off. The other advantage was I knew SDL, and it's really easy to learn, and a lot of people know it. And I didn't know, name the widget factory and so forth, that you might need on another platform. If I were to do it all over again, I would probably design this application first. Now that I know what I would want it to do. When I started this, I knew I wanted to be a ping program, and that was about it. Within 2 days, I had probably 4 of the major tools. I didn't have text, I didn't have magic. I'm being pushed. I guess what's interesting is you actually go back in the changelog to 6 and some years ago, and you can actually see, okay, initial release does this, and then the next version a day later does these couple things. It was actually releasing it. Every version was, 2002.09.12, 2002.09.12b, because I thought of something else, I must have had a lot of free time like that. Yeah. So moving into localization, speaking of ifdef, wrapping your localization in your source code around ifdefs is not the right way to do it. You can think about it. I actually got yelled at. So in the land of POSIX, Unixes and Linuxes, and even Mac and Windows, you can use it. There's a tool called gettext, which has been around forever. You wrap your string in a gettext call, and then depending on what locale the user is running under, which you can force if you need to, and actually do that with a little pull-down menu. You can be in German touchscreen, or German Windows, but you can say you want to play touchscreen French, and you can just kind of integrate it that way. You wrap your strings in the gettext call, and then that function just returns the localized version of that string. And what you end up with is a catalog of all the original English strings that you run a tool on your source code that says, here's all the strings that I found on the source, and here's kind of the context, what source code line it was in, any kind of comments that were nearby that might give the translator hints as to what the heck yes means in this context. Because you might, did you look at the daily Wilson failure yet? Oh, one of my favorite dialogues I've seen, and it was actually a Linux application, it was a GNOME application, was, are you sure you want to cancel? Cancel? Cancel. So, yeah, I don't know if that was a localization issue or what, but it's kind of a similar, not thinking about your strings thing. So you need to make sure that you give enough information to people who aren't digging in your code. People would just say, I'm going to start translating open source projects, and they start picking the ones they like. And they maybe never even use them. They just want to throw these strings out there to make the world a better place. They'll want to know what the heck you're talking about. So gettext, they just end up with a catalog of English text, and they just put their translations in, send it to me, and I put it in the project. So that works for most languages, but then you end up with Arabic, where a couple characters later on may affect what the characters before look like, or I guess maybe it's this way. So the standard I was using, just a regular TrueType font library under Linux, under STL, that just didn't have no idea what was going on. It just was putting out garbage, which you don't want. We ended up having to use a more sophisticated library that actually understands what the language is and can go back and modify what the characters look like as it spits out the full string. Like I said, the swapping the way the interface looks for the right to left languages for localizations is still kind of something on my to-do list. I don't know when I'll ever get around to that. Try to type in some of these languages in STL, where you're getting one character at a time from the keyboard, because you're kind of this event-driven thing. Try to write different Japanese characters using just a QWERTY keyboard. Doesn't work so well. So one of our developers, bless his heart, he's Korean, and he actually went in and created an input method system where you hit like one of the alt keys, and it says, okay, now I'm in input method mode when you're in the text tool, and it will start composing characters. So you say KA, and it comes out as a ka character. You say, I can't think of any languages. But we ended up supporting, based on that, input for Japanese, Korean, Chinese, simplified, I think, and Thai. So that was really cool, and that ended up actually being something that's fully portable, because we're not really depending on any libraries. We just kind of rolled it all ourselves. What it does need, though, is people who understand languages to come in and say, okay, here's a big text file that lists. When you type this, you get this hex code character should come out. So that meant I had to update the website under the How to Translate Our Program page to say, okay, now you can also translate how things are inputted if you need to in your language. So speaking of the website, actually translating the website right now is, I thought it was easy. but it ends up being kind of a bear because you end up with a lot of people using WYSIWYG HTML editors that throw in all the doc type and header and title and all this crap in what really should just be some HTML that gets embedded in another page. So what we're going to do, what I would like to do at some point, is you can actually get text under PHP. So every single string on the website, welcome to the TouchPaint website, blah, 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 paragraph, will be wrapped in a get text function call within the PHP code. And then that gets looked up in a catalog that people can send to me. So, bienvenidos, And then, I've learned that, well, this is something I should have known years ago, but I wasn't really ever localizing websites, that you can pretty much query the browser, what languages do you accept? And then based on that, based on the preference, like, I'll take Spanish first, but if not, then I'll take English. And if that's not available, then I'll take French, because these are languages I know in that order. Then people set their web browser up with those preferences. And then, right now I have a pull down and a cookie that I use to let people manually override whatever the browser might say, and I'll keep providing that too. So the stamps, is this actually a mouse or what is this? Teaser. Nobody piss me off. Oh, this is, hey, I don't work real slow. How do you click, man? I feel like I'm playing on my Atari Jaguar. It's not as fun. Roger didn't install them, but we have about 400 different pieces of artwork, and some of them are cartoon drawings and little symbols, and a lot of them are photographic. And you can scan them up and down. You get the fire truck, and it makes a horrible siren noise over and over again when you click it. Then you can plaster in your pictures. But I don't think it says. I don't think you see all this when you're looking at this thing. But down the bottom, it can give you a text description as well as a localized sound effect that describes what it is. So you can say like Saturn is the. It's 6. I was getting those two confused. I should come back and take this one. Is the nth planet, and it has rings, or whatever it says in the application, and we can localize that. But to make it easy on teachers to make these stamps, they just drop a PNG file in a directory. They drop a TXT file with the same name in the directory that has the description. And if it wants to be localized, you can say on the next line, for example, ES for Spanish equals whatever the Spanish translation is. So that's how we did the stamp descriptions to begin with. And then the translator said, this is a pain in the ass to have to send you 400 TXT files with one-line changes that might clobber something else and somebody might be working on at the same time. So somebody in the project who knows Python and shell scripting a little bit better than I do actually generated a set of tools that you throw all these text files at it, it makes a translation catalog that you then send to the translators, and then they send you the updated, all the Spanish, all the German, all in one unit, and then it recreates all the text files with every single language for each. So it runs this process for like a minute on my computer maybe. But that made it a lot easier to maintain. And then at the end, I like to keep on the website kind of a list of, here's all the languages we support, here's all the statuses. So if somebody comes stumbling upon the site and says, oh, German's a thing, I can help with that. I got a couple minutes to look into this. I provide a really easy way to see what these text catalogs are. And then anytime they get updated, I actually tell the website, okay, scan all of them, determine how good they are, make sure you get all the latest ones out of CVS, and then put them up for download on the website on the little graph. And what's cool about this is all the stuff, the entire website is also in CVS. So if you guys today want to go to SourceForge, you can actually go browse around using the web interface and look at the scripts and look at the source of the PHP for any of the pages, and laugh heartily if you want, depending on the page. But you can actually browse around, and you can say, hey, you got a typo here, or hey, the scripts could be better this way. You can actually, provide a patch based on the code that's running the website. And I'm not sure how many websites do it that way, but I think most of them go more for content management system software like Drupal or whatever any of those other ones are. Joomla. I'll be thinking of weird names, man, you know? Something my kid might say. Google, what the hell? You all know the story of Google, right? It's like 1 with 100 zeros, and it was named after a word that the guy's kid came up with. And then Google, the search engine, took that name and misspelled it. So you might notice I haven't mentioned database anywhere. Yeah, no database. I've even got a gallery of artwork, which is sorted out of date. I'm actually getting people saying, "My daughter wants to know when her picture's going to be." You're going to start kids out on me. Samples of artwork from kids, and this is probably where it would be beneficial to have a real database. I just have a text file full of here's all the different authors that I know about. You know, if a kid has sent me multiple pictures, I can say, oh, here's all of Amy's pictures, Amy S's pictures. She's 3 years old, and you can browse around in that way, which is cool for the kids to see. And then I have the whole gallery, which is like everything, and then it kind of refers back to the author by a little unique idea, like Amy S is Amy S, 3 years old, lives in Connecticut, likes kittens. So yeah, that's another part of the interactivity of the site. And again, like I said, I don't use a database for it. I'm kind of faking a database using text files. And part of the reason is no overhead, no ISP interference about whether or not they have MySQL installed or what kind of stuff they can give me there. So it keeps the site itself a little bit portable. If you've got a Linux box or probably even a Windows box with PHP, and if you run some of these scripts, Python, and a shell, I guess, Bash or something, you can actually have your own home copy on your laptop. And I did this for a while. I did this when I wasn't online all the time. I could actually maintain the website, and then when I got back on the internet, I could commit all the changes up, and then go to the web server and say, okay, get an update of everything that's been changed in CDS, and all of a sudden the website matches what was on my laptop. So I promise I talk about frustration. So the best one was a guy that emailed me and said, does TouchPaint work with Windows 2003 terminal services? And I'm like, I don't actually know what that is. And he actually wrote back, I can't believe that you don't know whether or not your software. I'm like, okay, do you remember what the price tag was for I'm just a guy at my desk at home in the evening working on this, if you don't understand this concept, right? But you get stuff like that. But no, I really do like, does it work with this kind of weird network? I don't know, try it out. And if it doesn't, we'll try to fix it. All the kindergartners log in with the same username, and they get the same place on the network, which means they're all going to clobber each other's work. And so there's places where configuration management. Oh God, that's never. I would never thought I'd be talking about configuration management with TouchPaint. If you want to change the settings, we have to somehow distribute them across all the PCs in the lab or something like that. There's things like that that I have to help walk. Usually teachers through, because the IT guys aren't talking to me. And then, so blind leading the blind, in a sense. But for the most part, it's been good. I'm able to walk people through, like, well, here's a couple things that I know can work and might be able to work, and if you need help, come back to me. And I don't know if they gave up and jumped off a bridge, but I often don't hear back from them. So like I said, sometimes I get these arbitrary deadlines in my brain, and then I have all these just random tasks to her to try to get him to help me out with it, and they're usually busy. Or the Mac guy actually warned me that he's going to go on vacation hiking for 2 weeks without the internet, and I said, one, I'm jealous, and then literally like the next day I get some big Mac question. I go, unacceptable content introduced. Now I didn't actually put any details on here. I didn't want to piss anyone off who might be helping with the project, but for example, I got a complaint from somebody in Egypt that with regards to some of the Christmas artwork, the Arabic translation was saying something about Christianity, like, well, we don't get to celebrate Christmas, or something. It was bizarre. I tried to translate it with Google, and it didn't really come out right, but they felt upset that I was having an opinion in there. I'm like, I didn't do it! So I got to complain to the guy who did the translation, and I got to tell the other people that sorry that it happened, and you can help us out if you want. And they seemed pretty positive. They said that they'd love to help clean things up for us. But that's part of the thing. You end up trusting. What's that?
After Christmas.
Yeah. You end up putting a lot of trust in the people you've never met and you probably never will in your entire life, which is a little depressing. Like, I might never meet this person if this will help with me all the time because they're literally like thousands of miles away. But that's that's how the internet works. It's very strange that way. It's all extremely distributed. People in different time zones popping up at like 11 p.m. saying good morning. I'm like, oh, you're the guy in Belgium, huh? So. Time to, 5 minutes. Okay, so good. I've only got 4 more pages now. So, yeah, I know there was a guy who liked to put a gun in the app and a bunch of Army stuff, and I took the gun out, and then I left the Army stuff in because it seems part of the world, and some kids like Army toys, tanks and planes and paratroopers and stuff. But at that point, I added the ability for people. On those platforms, I don't know if the Mac version does it, that's another issue. You can actually say, I don't want any seasonal stuff. I don't want any Christian or Jewish or any, Easter, Halloween even. I don't want any of that junk in here for my kids to look at if you want to. Or you can also say if it's inappropriate for your science class to have, say the sports stuff, I guess maybe unless you're teaching physics. You can pick and choose what categories of stamps you can go in and when you install. And then since it's just, directories in the file system full of pictures, you can just go in there and delete stuff by hand in your file explorer too if you need to. So it's very open-ended, but I try to make it up to the end user, and in that sense I'm talking about the parents and teachers to install it, to decide, what kind of stuff is good or bad, because I really want to have no opinion on it. But again, that's a place where you have to be careful. You have to be careful that, people aren't saying, death to America, when it really should say, like, a red truck! Or something, so, or worse yet, switch to Vista. Sorry. The guy at the information booth, when he saw computer science, when I signed up to get my parking thing, he was complaining about Windows Vista. I thought that was awesome! Anyway, so yeah, I got to worry about whether or not people understand the website. I put a lot of information there, and that could be a downside in some sense. There's no I added finally a download Windows, Mac, Linux, because a lot of people go, oh, this great thing, too bad it's not for Windows. And I go, what gives you that idea? It says on the front page for Windows. But I had to put a freaking logo on the website to make it more apparent. I've actually started thinking. Maybe I should, in the splash screen, have logos of what platforms it supports, so that people who just launch it randomly somewhere will know, oh, I can get this at home, So, really quickly, I've had some epiphanies. This usually involves a double-shot mocha. I've recently, since having a baby ring, triple shot. Plus a bike ride equals this tremendous brainstorm. And one of them actually started as a joke, was things like in Photoshop have plugins. Why not TouchPaint? And now we have this whole plug-in infrastructure. All of the magic tools aren't actually part of the source code anymore. They're each little objects that get loaded at runtime. So you can develop your own without actually having to invest in learning how to build TouchPaint itself and digging around in its code. You have this own little standalone API that you program for. You may have seen my little dancing cat. That was another one that I thought was cool, that I don't really see in applications like Debian or Photoshop. And a calligraphy tool I thought would be cool. I was reading the Inkscape documentation. It was explaining here's how to do some nice looking calligraphy. And I can do that. I would do basically curves and stuff like that. All right, that's it. Should I open for questions or?
Well, no, but
go to lunch?
Pizza coming up.
Pizza. All right.
Where is the pizza?